Hey there, and welcome to the daily podcast where wisdom smacks us with kisses or love taps. I'm MichelleSpiva, a wisdom strengthening coach, your host, and practical priestess of wisdom. Mwah. Join us daily to gain wisdom and mental strength as we tackle innovative thinking, address emotional and behavioral life traps, and yes, provide you with some practical how to's to wrap it all up. So settle in or crank up the speed 2x, whatever gets your mental processes firing as we dive in. Stay tuned. Hey there, this is MichelleSpiva, your practical priestess of wisdom, with today's podcast of Wisdom Smack. Mwah! Join me on the flip as we get into talking about how to be you. Yes, indeed. We're talking about the power and the authority that comes when you are your authentic self. And not only that, we are talking about how to get yourself ready for the times that we're in now. So sit back, relax, join me as we talk about and delve into what wisdom has to say to help us get prepared for the sign of the times as we talk about the authenticity test. Could you pass? I'll see you on the flip. Yay! All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get started. We're talking about authenticity. And I want to ask you, could you pass the authenticity test? And the reason why I'm asking that is because we now find ourselves in a time of great authenticity. So let's get started like we normally do and talk about the growth of that word and how well it has, or not so well, survived throughout the ages. So, lo and behold, we go back to the 14th century, the 1300s. And at that time, authentic meant that it had some authority, meaning that it was authoritative and duly recognized as a sense of authority. Now, they say that this has been eroded over time to be replaced with that which is reliable, trustworthy, or even genuine. But, but I do want to say this, that even though we don't think of authentic as something that is set to have authority over someone, we do still kind of hold to that when we think of it in terms of ourself. So when we get into thinking about authenticity, we want to look at it as the makeup of the words. And so from the Greek authentikos, yes, I said that right. It means original, genuine, or even principle. And it is one acting on one's own authority. And so that kind of straddles the line between the authority that we spoke of in the 1300s, where it had some type of weight to it to be obeyed by everyone, and when it comes to that personal touch of authentic. And so the auto part of it, meaning self, and the root of it, seen, if you will, means to accomplish or achieve. And then, of course, depending on the state, whether it is authenticity, which is the noun, authentic, which is the adjective, and so on, means the action or the state of it. And so it comes down to being a doer of self authority. Okay. And I wanted to make sure that we said that first because it's going to set up our understanding of how this is fitting in our world. Now, you've probably been seeing this, but I'm going to kind of like hopefully draw out a little more of the patterns that are all around us with why this is now becoming the age of authenticity and why I am asking you to consider what wisdom is giving you today to either walk in that authenticity or to start strengthening yourself so that you can pass the test of authenticity. And so with that, I want to say that there comes a time when we all have this dark night of the soul, and it's where you meet, and it's not necessarily one night, but it's a period in your life where you hit that wall, where you have to deal with all of you, the totality, the good, the bad, the indifferent, the ugly, the whatever. And during that time, there are certain things that are put into motion. There are certain things that are eradicated or wiped out, and there are certain things that are input. And these are when we usually have our great growth spurts. And most of the time, we don't like when this happens. And it's because there tends to be a lot of sacrifice, suffering, and pain. Yeah, I know. But I'm going to say this, and that is that when we are looking at authentic, it gets to the heart of what a lot of people have as everyday questions like, who am I? What is my purpose? What's my passion? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? And on and on and on. We find throughout the ages, throughout the different cultures and the expressions of ethnicities, we all seem to have these questions. And now, lo and behold, wouldn't you know it, that we are finding ourselves in this time where those who not necessarily have answered all these questions um, concretely, but those who have, even if it's just a little thread of understanding of who they are, what they want to do, what they're supposed to be doing, or are doing it, are going to thrive, and the others are going to flip flop, I should say, flip flop in the wind. So, authenticity in today's world looks like this. It looks like uh, appropriations. Now, this was well before the advent of the pandemic, but there was a groundswell of people who were crying out about cultural appropriations. And the people who were getting accused of it were they didn't think it was fun. And rightfully so. It's not good to be, called on the carpet of appropriating someone else's culture. But one of the things that I like, especially when you look at anthropologists and sociologists, they don't just look at what's happening, and they don't even just look at the why. They look at the timing, and they look at the spirit of the times. They look at the generations that are driving certain things. And when the big hooplas of cultural appropriations, culture vulture, and all of those words started trending about 4 years ago, people thought it was a fad, but it was a groundswell that, along with a few other things that I don't really have time to get into for today, but all got into this gumbo to produce this entree that we now find ourselves living in, which is, to me, the dawning of the age of the authentic. And the reason why is because with the cultural appropriations, when these learned types were looking at it, they were looking for source, they were looking for drivers, they were looking for leaders or specific influences, or whatever it was that they could pinpoint to see if this was being driven by a person or if this was an evolution of a thought. And what a lot of them have said in various, and I might add, very eloquent ways, is that this is the evolution of a thought. And that evolution is this. Now, you guys have heard me talk about polarity and, to a lesser extent, rhythm. And when I'm talking about these, I'm talking about seven principles, seven natural laws. And of these two, the law of polarity, and I've talked about it. Think of polarity as degrees of something. So opposites attract. So white and black are the same, except that they are just in varying degrees of lower or higher vibration. Um, and so it's the degrees between something. And that's why when we talk about polarity, we talk about a left and a right. Now, the movement between these degrees is where we come into the law of rhythm. Think of rhythm as the ebb and the flow, the in and the out, the up and the down. It is the rhythmic dance of the pendulum that goes back and forth. It is the swing on the tree on a lazy day where you push it and you go back and forth. And so rhythm moves us between these degrees of polarity. And what we have found right now is that for as far as we were with everyone just taking everything as it was many years ago, where people could just take other people's cultures and do what they would with it, no one said a word, the pendulum has swung. The law of rhythm has swung. And now we are finding that many people are being pulled to the other side or polarized, if you will, to the other side, where that is not okay. It is not okay. Just at the time of this recording, a famous American football team who for years refused to remove a cultural appropriation as a mascot have decided to do that. And people are like mouth ajar, like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? People are looking at all of the different statues around the world, the monuments around the world coming down. And people are even looking at how uh, people are wanting the voices of their cartoon characters to match the ethnicity of the person that they're voicing. Just so many different things. And so these are lending toward people's need because they have swung, the pendulum has swung to the other side, and the polarity is on the other side where people want to get as close, if not the source, as possible. So, whereas it was fine to have facsimiles, imitations, and even derivatives of, now we're in a time where people want the purest, truest form of the matter. They want the authentic. And why do they want the authentic? They want the authentic because we are now in a time where instead of this meaning the usual, original, or principle or genuine, they want also the authority of it that someone or something that is that original would bring. They want the truest, most potent expression of whatever it is to be represented. And so people are now finding that the world is upside down. If they well, a lot of people feel it like it's upside down, but it's not that it's upside down. It's just we're at a different end of the pendulum, if you will. And in order to, I believe, have some sanity and to survive during this time is to start preparing yourself to be able to pass the authenticity test. And the reason why I'm saying this is a test is because as we continue to move forward, anything we do now is going to be predicated on relationship instead of object. Now, let me explain a little bit about that. And y'all know I'm going to recap this stuff, so stick with me. So, when we talk about relationship instead of object, think of it as this. Think of it as relationship being interaction or even transformation. So, when you have an interaction with someone, the accepted way of doing things now is to have a mutual betterment or a mutual evolution or transformation for having interacted with each other, even if it is where you're exchanging money. Whereas before, it used to be where it was okay for you to have a interaction with someone where it was a transaction, meaning that each person was responsible for trying to make sure that they got what they needed out of the interaction. So if I was having a relationship with you, I needed to make sure that whatever it was I was in it for, I got. Whether that meant I wanted to feel good about myself, or I wanted to not feel alone, or I wanted to make money, or whatever it was. Today's expression of that is not about what I want to get out of the relationship. It's more so, what can I honestly exhibit in the relationship. You see, if you ever want to know what's happening, look at the stuff that people have the biggest problem with. In the United States, where I'm located, we have factions of people who are having problems with wearing a mask. Now, I am not getting political because that's not where I vibrate. What I'm saying is there are always clues and codes and different layers and levels all around. And when you look at people pushing back on something, it's usually going to be a tip off indicator or a signal or a sign to look beneath it. So, why the mask? Seriously, why the mask? And if you look at that, then you start to realize that a mask obscures, hides, obstructs the truth. And when you are moving into a time where authenticity, meaning that you are your truthful self standing in your authoritative power, there is no room for a proverbial mask. And so over and over again, we start to see all of these different signs. Now, I have nothing to say about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. That is not what I'm here for. I'm just using that as an illustrative example of how the universe always leaves clues of things to be aware of. And this is how wisdom starts to speak to us. So now that we can see that we're in a different time, a different dispensation, if you want, where when they're writing this in the history books, and I hope there are various variations, different people writing different histories, so we'll have a better account of it. They will put an asterisk by this time as a major turning point. The other day, I talked about the CEO of Airbnb saying that in these last few months, we have had more change, innovation, whatever that you want to call it, in a few months that it would have taken a decade to do in a few months. And he's very right about that. And the reason why is because we are now faced with the bareness of self. So let's get into this quote unquote authenticity test and figuring out if you can pass it. So, with that, it is not enough to have settled on who you are. It's not even enough for you to have taken multiple personality tests and think that you know who you are. No, what it is for in the now, learning the new wisdom skill of being able to always, and I said always, boil down to the bare essentials of the truths that you're working with at that time, the bare essentials of the adjectives you use to express who you are at that time. And this is a big one. The bare words that are used to elicit or trigger an emotional response from you at this time. And the reason why I say at this time is because in the now, in today's world, we are not who we were a few weeks ago, let alone a few years. So even though we've had this fascination with tell me who I am by taking all of these personality tests and DNA test and all of this, we are finding that we're transient in who we are. And that means that we're always looking and working on figuring out who is my authentic self today. And so getting down to the bare, being able to strip away all of the stuff that you think defines you and focusing in on what are the truths that you hold to at this particular time. What are the adjectives that you currently use to describe who you are when nobody's looking? And what are the deep, evocative words that, when used, cause or elicit a response out of you? This is going to help you to hone in to your authenticity. Now, mind you, you notice I didn't say anything about what you do. It is because authenticity puts us back into a natural order of self. And that natural order of self is be, do, have. I've talked about this in other podcasts and I'll say it again. We are human beings doing the act of living so that we can have the life we want or hope to have. And so by returning to an authentic way of living, We learn to be first, and then the do and the have will erupt out of our being. So, what we find is that not what we find, what you're going to start to sense and see is that, say, for instance, you decide, okay, I want to see what I'm feeling like now. What's my true authenticity? And I kind of like dare you. I dare you. Go find a personality test online and answer it as honestly and truthfully as you can. Don't try to trick it to get a response that you want to have. At that particular time, in that particular moment, take that personality test. And when you get the results, take a deep breath in, let it out, and then read what it says. And for a majority of people, it's going to possibly give you, I said majority, possibly, Lord, it's going to mayhap give you a different result than you're used to getting about your personality. And if that happens, that's good. And the reason why it's good is because you cannot go through a major cataclysmic, earth shattering change that we've gone through and lived to tell about it without changing. You just can't. And so we're all at a reset where we all must learn how to get as close as possible back to the source, be honest and humble in our honesty, and start to practice the uncomfortableness of being. Now, for some people, this is going to be really hard, including me, because that being means that we have to be seen. And I was looking at it, I was like, oh my gosh, like I love doing podcasts. I don't like doing video because I don't like to be seen. And that is a testament to how I've grown. Because when I was younger, I was like, oh yeah, hey, me, let me be in the front. That's not me anymore. And so I am learning that nothing stays the same. The only real thing we have that's permanent is change. And just like everything else, as chaos has come through and now things are starting to settle and we're starting to get back into the first stages of new birth and a new order, we're learning that in this world, in this day, it is about authenticity. Let me prove a point for you. Social media influencers. Isn't it something that as we have gone through this, social media influencers who have been groomed, who have become proficient in garnering and arresting the attention of millions, have been some of the first and longest to suffer during the time of people being shut in. Now, you would think people being shut in and not really having a lot of places to go would be at the mercy and in the front or seats of the audience of the influencers. And that is not the case. Instead, we are finding that people who never had a big platform before are starting to emerge. And when you look at them, guess what? You got it. They are being authentically themselves. They are as close to the source of who they are as possible. They are not in a performative situation. They're not going through the actions because that's what's cool to do. They are who they are. They are, as I like to say in our neck of the woods, we're not new to this. We're true to this type of people. And so it's starting to show all around us. There are signs. The masks have to come off and people have to be authentic, because what used to be okay as a transactional relationship, quid pro quo, you do for me, I do for you, that doesn't fly anymore. And so I want to ask you, can you pass the test? Can you have interactions with people? Can you interact with the new way of life with being authentically bare and raw? Understanding the bare truths that define what you believe in, understanding the evocative words that move you, and understanding the truest, barest, simplest adjectives that describe you in this moment. Are you willing to be okay with the change that you've gone through? Are you willing to meet your new self and accept your new self? And there are so many different things and avenues I could have taken this with the authenticity, but it's not about me. It's about we. And it's about how wisdom wants to give us these little wisdom smacks that help to prepare us. I want to thank those people who've reached out to me, who have started saying, "Oh my gosh, this stuff is really applicable and practical for my now." And that's why we show up. That's why we do it, because it helps all of us. And with that, that's the thing that I want to talk about when we talk about the practicality of getting ready for your authenticity test. Now, I am always trying to learn and grow. I'm always trying to do before I ask anybody else to do something. And there is this project that I'm currently involved in, and I'm pushing myself. But the first stages of it require growth and then the movement into contribution. Now, I have done this many times before, and I'll make it through this one because I have confidence in the process. But what I'm going to say is one of the fastest ways to start accessing your truly authentic self in this now is to focus on growing and contributing. And what does that mean, Michelle? That means that in all thy getting, help somebody else get. you know Start to contribute, start to interact with each other. I think I hold a gold medal in being a lurker online. I just find that even though I can be very gregarious in person, I don't like to type a lot and talk a lot online. I just don't. And so this is a stretch and a growth for me to be able to be authentic and to say things online, because I'm ever aware that online is forever. And so it just simply means that I can be authentic and I can still self edit. I don't have to put everything out, but the stuff I do put out, I want it to be as authentic as possible. And that still means that I get the opportunity to censor myself. I still get an opportunity to maybe hold a few punches here and there. I mean, not that I want to punch anything, but I still can do that. But I do not have to make it palatable for the many, because that's not what life is about at this particular time. And I'm very grateful for the fact that our society around the world requires that you show up as you. No costumes, no mask, no charlatan, sneaky, tricky, trying to pretend you're someone you're not. It's not happening. That is not flowing or going. And those who are willing to start growing and to start contributing, sharing, interacting in relationship instead of in object are going to do well. Let me give you an example about this relationship versus object that I'm talking about. I heard this from Dr. Joy DeGruy, and it was very powerful. She was talking about children in elementary school in the formative years. And she was talking about how she was doing some observations in the school where her grandchildren go. And Dr. Joy, like me, she's a African American Black woman, and of course, her grandkids are African American grandkids. And over the years of her observing and doing different things, she started to notice different little things about how children interact. And she talked about how when teachers want to get children involved, the first thing they do is they start a transactional relationship, whether they know it or not. And they do this by, if you do this, then I do that. Meaning, if you act good, then you get a star. And what she noticed was over and over again, not just for her grandkids, but through the many years that she would go and observe, is that the African American children would get tired of the stars, and they would start to have complaints of, the teacher doesn't like me. Well, that's why I don't work. They don't call on me. They don't like me, or whatever. And she said what she finally realized was that those little kids were saying, I want relationship. I don't want objects. I don't want a transactional relationship. And they knew the difference. They couldn't articulate the words, but they knew the difference. And now the world is catching up to what these little kids have always been saying. The world no longer wants to give you a thumbs up. They no longer want to just give you a highlighted star or a badge. They want relationship. They want someone alive and interested on the other end. They want to have a interactive relationship where you both grow together instead of it being, well, if I do this for you, then you do this for me. And that requires authenticity. That requires us being able to get past the uncomfortableness of the rawness of being unperfected. That requires that we realize, just like a whole lot, bless their heart, a whole lot of influencers are having to find out that no longer can you put on a show and a caricature of a person, because like little kids, we can all sniff that out. And we're tired of it. We want to go to the source. We want, if you are portraying this, we want that to be who you are. We don't want to hear from, like you're hearing it in the streets. They don't want to hear from celebrities talking about oppression. They want to hear from the streets talking about oppression. Likewise, they don't want someone who professes to have all the answers, but whose personal life is in shambles trying to talk to them. And so, to be authentic, to pass the test, it's going to require that you get down to the bare bones of what makes you tick in your belief system, of what makes you feel in the words that evoke that out of you, and how you describe yourself in that particular time, and be willing to be okay with the changes that are still happening, and understanding that this is a new day and authenticity is the only way. So guess what? Yeah, y'all, my time is up. I thank you for yours. This has been MichelleSpiva, your practical priestess of wisdom, with today's podcast of Wisdom Smack. Mwah. Please don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and reach out to me. I actually do read them. And I hope that this will help you to get the wisdom you need to live the life that is going to help you to make it, and not only make it, but to thrive in today's times. That's going to do it for now. Bye. And that's going to do it for today's podcast of Wisdom Smack with MichelleSpiva. If you like this podcast, please help us get the word out. Like, comment, subscribe, and even share. And if you really like it, please help us continue to get the word out by considering using this show's link for Amazon. So when you want to go to Amazon and you do all of your general shopping, please use MichelleSpiva.com/AMZ. It's simple as that. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and this show might receive a little bit of commission that will go towards helping to further get these episodes out to you and to others. So thank you so much for listening. This has been MichelleSpiva with Wisdom Smack. Bye.